Welcome to my living room. I'm going to go ahead and jump right into the reading today. It's meaty, and I'm going to do a separate video about my personal take on it. Please remember the reading is coming from my asking. It's emanating from where I'm at mentally, the questions that I'm asking every day. And so there's a focus here of what does it really take to make us happy, be it in our job, career, calling, personal life, whatever it is. Where does joy and clarity really come from in living a life? Because I think it's not so much about what we're doing, but how we're doing it. But let's see what the masters say. I'm going to start with my Abraham flipbook. And it says, you are multi-dimensional. When you are counting on action to get what you want, it is hard work. I can relate to that. I've worked very hard in my life. But in my family, we honored hard work. So it's like a chip on your shoulder or a badge or whatever. And that's why most of you don't have the life experience of joy that you seek. And I can honestly say my family is not very joyful. In other words, it becomes a life experience of just gathering up stuff. And even in the gathering up of stuff in this mediocre creation, you're tired. You work long, hard hours and you get very much disconnected from your feeling of freedom just to eke out a meager living because you're counting on action to make things happen. And action isn't where it's at, it's in the vibration. And I love here that it says you get disconnected from your feeling of freedom, because I can say when I work long, hard hours and I'm feeling exhausted, that's exactly it. I start to feel trapped. And that's such a key component, I think, of the happy life. And I've got my little list here of the things it takes to be happy, but we'll wait to classify those. But I think this reading will fall into sort of our expression and stimulation of who we are. All right, so it says, you are powerful, powerful creators here with tremendous intent, but the intent cannot be measured by physical terms. That gets so confusing as you try to decide the path you're meant to follow. I can relate. I'm confused about the path I'm meant to follow right now. This be for me. You become overwhelmed with the possibilities, which I am. And so we are wanting to remind you, you did not come forth with one path. Dang it. You are too broad for that. Okay. So it's not about action. Long hours are going to take away my feeling of freedom, but also I don't just have one path. I do have a lot of options. So it's okay to be confused. That's what I hear there. The third quote, it is only in your physicalness that you feel singular in your ability to be. I can only be in one place at one time. I can only do one thing at one time. But from your broader perspective, you're multidimensional. I really appreciate what Neville has started to add to that in my understanding, but it's an important reminder that we're overpowerifying, if you will, our physical self when we think only the physical self and the action that it's doing is going to create any results in our life. I can see how that limits my understanding of what I can achieve. And the fourth quote, nothing is more exhilarating than to dance through life, recognizing that the universe is there to yield to you whatever you want, whenever you want it. You can see why this says you're multidimensional. I'm getting the point of that. So basically, when I'm only depending on my action, I'm making myself a very single point, and you can't generate that many results from that. But when I realize like the whole universe is here to help me, and I have a multidimensional self that can access many things and make many things happen, I'm thinking too small. That's what comes out in that. Okay. Now I'm going to jump into what has turned out to be, I just pulled it out kind of, I didn't expect, Daybook of Comfort and Joy. My friend got me this years ago. I think it's from the 90s. I tried to hashtag her name. It doesn't even come up as a hashtag on YouTube. Poor Breathnach, Sarah Breathnach. But I've opened it and it's hilarious because it's dated and it's right where I am right now. Imagine that. And so I'm going to continue to share it because I think it's pertinent here. And this one for September 7th is Wishcraft, Getting from Here to There. And there's a quote from Zelda Fitzgerald to kick it off. And it says, oh, the secret life of man and woman, dreaming how much better we would be than we are if we were somebody else, or even ourselves, and feeling that our estate has been unexploited to its fullest. Right there it's talking, and we can all relate to it, but it's a scarcity conversation that other people have it better that I'm doing something wrong and that I don't have everything that I should or could, which is also kind of true when I'm relying on action and hard work as we do at this time in our culture. So let's dig in a little bit. So she says, she can't be the only person that cries at the beginning of Pinocchio when Jiminy Cricket stares out the window and says, "When you wish upon a star." And I'll admit, I get teary. She said, "Perhaps I cry as might you, because we wish on stars and hope with all our hearts that our dreams will come true. But turning a wooden puppet into a real boy, or a precious dream into reality," which is the metaphor of the story, "requires something more in the 1990s, or the 2020s, we'll say, than just waving a magic wand. Maybe." So it says, how about a wise, compassionate, and savvy fairy godmother? Well, Barbara sure is that fairy godmother, but one with an attitude. And I'm not really familiar with her work, but it says she knows all about life makeovers. She went from being a divorced mother on welfare to being a psychotherapist and career consultant, which I find humorous because I think about being a psychotherapist, but I already have the qualifications for career consultant. But that's an incredibly dramatic life makeover. But as a therapist, she began to suspect that many of her depressed patients didn't really need long-term therapy. This is what I've also discovered when I was in long-term therapy, as much as they needed a reason to get out of bed every morning. Like maybe we're just feeling apathetic and unexcited about our lives. And I think we can all relate to that at this point. Since Barbara transformed her own life, she thought she could help people make dreams come true. So she began offering life direction seminars, and that led to a book called Wishcraft: How to Get What You Really Want. Here you find practical advice to shape vague yearnings into authentic adventures so that you have a life you love, and so that you wake up every morning excited about the day ahead and delighted to be what you're doing, even if you're sometimes nervous and a little scared. And I read this and I was like, wow, that is exactly what I'm looking for and exactly what I'm talking about, right? I want to jump out of bed invigorated and excited. That's really what this is about. It's not really about what you're doing. It's about how you feel about your life and what you're doing. So this woman went to one of her seminars in the early 80s, and she said, Barbara taught to create the life you want. You don't need mantras, self-hypnosis, a character building problem, or a new toothpaste. You do need practical techniques for problem solving, planning, and getting your hands on materials, skills, informations, and contacts. You need common sense strategies for coping with human feelings and foibles that aren't going to go away, like fear, depression, and laziness. And you need ways of riding out the temporary emotional storms your life changes can cause in your closest relationships while still getting the extra emotional support you need for risk taking. And that reminds me of what I was reading in the book by Alan Watts when he's saying, we have a million things to do to help us with sort of our mental problem right now. And he lists far more than she does even here of self-hypnosis and career building programs. He lists dervish dancing and religious, transformation and all these different things that we're doing to try to get this simple thing that we want, which is really just to feel awesome and jump out of bed in the morning with excitement. And it said the world needs dreamers and the world needs doers. But above all, the world needs dreamers who do. Don't just entrust your hopes and wishes to the stars. Today, begin learning the craft that will enable you to reach for them. So this is a great point, but it's missing a little bit of the magic in what we just read from Abraham, which is it says we need the world needs dreamers who do. But the key component of that is you dream and then the doing comes, which Abraham would say, it's obviously an action-related world, so we need action, but we've got to feel inspired first. Plug your vacuum in first and then start vacuuming. Get the dream, get the inspiration, and then do. So it's coming from inspiration versus motivation. Let's dig a little deeper. And the reading from Emmet Fox in another book I have, a daily book I have, is a little different, but super short. I thought I'd throw it out because I've been talking about my past lately. It's been on my mind. So, of course, today's reading is No Grave Robbing. It says, don't be a grave robber. Let corpses alone. In due course, nature disposes of such remains if they are left undisturbed. Every time you dig up an old grievance or an old mistake by rehearsing it in your mind, or still worse, telling someone else about it, You're simply ripping open a grave, and you know what you may expect to find. Live the present. Prepare intelligently for the future and let the past alone. This is what Jesus meant when he said, let the dead bury their dead. Make a law for yourself today that you're not going to touch mentally any negative thing that has happened up to the present moment, and keep that law. Life is too precious for grave robbing. The past is the past. Liquidate it. If a negative memory comes into your mind, cremate it with the right thought and forget it. And so, humorously, over the last bit, I've been focusing on the past, and I've had some vivid dreams around it, and I've noticed I'm digging it out, and I'm like, this isn't right. So we're gonna start practicing that, focusing in the present, and let's bring in a little more guidance for what's happening in the present. This is the Course in Miracles lesson for the day that says, I am under no law but God's. And I'm gonna do, actually, why don't I do the Neville reading first? Because I think it'll really sort of baseline what we mean when we're talking about God and God's laws. Neville is, I think, I'm blown away by his material in the sense of the way he reframes so much of the symbolism that we've had in our world and lives associated with religious texts in a powerful way, rather than like a beat guilt stick of past and sin and death. And it totally reframes it as a present moment, powerful way of living. And this is called crucifixion and resurrection. Talk about a powerful symbology in our culture that often invokes sort of this guilt and weightiness. And I think he really shifts it here. So he says, the events of crucifixion and resurrection are so interwoven, they must be explained together, for one determines the other. This mystery is symbolized on earth in the rituals of Good Friday and Easter. So if you've noticed, and I have, Easter isn't fixed date. I didn't know what drove it, and he explains it here. So he says the date can change. It can be anywhere from March to April, and the day is determined. So the first Sunday after the full moon in Aries is celebrated as Easter. Isn't that odd? Aries begins on the 21st day of March and marks the beginning of spring. So it's the spring equinox. So it'd be the first Sunday after the spring equinox. This movable date should tell the observant one to look for some interpretation rather than the one given him. So, like he says, if it was actual historical event, it would happen on the same day, year to year. So seen from the earth, the sun in its northern passage appears at the spring season of the year to cross the imaginary lineman called the equator. So it is said by the mystic to be crossified or crucified that man might live. Because they noticed as soon as this event took place, all of a sudden spring happens. All of nature starts to rise from winter. So they concluded that this disturbance of nature at this season of the year was due directly to sort of this crossing or event that occurred. So if these dates actually mark the death and resurrection of Jesus, they'd be fixed like all historical events, but these dates symbolize the death and resurrection of the Lord, but this Lord is your awareness of being. It is recorded that he gave his life that you may live. I am come that you might have life and that you might have it more abundantly. But that does make sense in spring. I've been living in a very nature-based environment for the last few years, and it was crazy to watch the death. I mean, we have this huge garden and it would be so beautiful, and I would experience real loss when winter hit. Everything would die and it would be really sad. I would grieve. And then in spring, it all just starts to pop out and it's just so glorious. So there is this definitely death rebirth process. I never crossed it over to actually the full-on crucifixion and resurrection symbology, but I get it now. So it says, the spring is the time of the year when millions of seeds, which all winter laid buried in the ground, suddenly spring into visibility, that man might live. And because the mystical drama of the crucifixion and resurrection is in the nature of this yearly change, it is celebrated at the spring season of the year, but is actually taking place every moment in time. The being that is crucified is our awareness of being. The cross is your conception of yourself. And the resurrection is the lifting into visibility of this conception of your being. So every moment, as he's saying, you become aware of being, you have this idea of yourself, and it's being resurrected in front of you through this sort of subconscious, mental, physical, projected experience. So he says it should be a celebration. So in order to really do this, you must feel yourself to be the thing desired. You must feel that I am that, for I am the resurrection and the life. Yes, I am, your awareness of being, is the power resurrecting and making alive that which you are aware of being. And it says, two shall agree on touching anything, and I shall establish it on earth. The two agreeing are you, your awareness, and the thing desired, that which you have decided you want to be through becoming aware of it. And when this agreement is attained, the crucifixion is completed. Two have crossed or crossified each other. I am and that thing have joined, and I am now nailed upon the form of that. The nail that binds you to the cross is the nail of feeling. So here we have that emotional piece. When I feel it to really be true, it becomes true for me. So the mystical marriage is now consummated, and the result will be the birth of a child or the resurrection of a son bearing witness to his father. But that's an idea. Whatever you believe to be true for you will then be born. Consciousness is wedded to that which it is conscious of being. The day you cease to be conscious of being is the day that your expression of that will return to the Father or the faceless formless awareness. So it says heaven, when it says the kingdom of heaven is within you. In heaven, consciousness, God is touched by that which he is aware of being. But it's not a locality, it's a state of consciousness. The day man feels I am free, I am wealthy, I am strong, God, I am, is touched by these qualities or virtues. And the results of such touching will be seen in the resurrection of the qualities felt. For man must have visible confirmation of all that he is conscious of being. Now you will know why man, or manifestation, is always made in the image of God. Your awareness images and out pictures all that you're aware of being. I am the Lord, and beside me there is no other God. I am the resurrection and the life. So it's the consciousness of being. I find this to be absolutely fantastic for the symbology of what it's really talking about, that there's this process in every moment of choosing what we are and choosing who we want to be. And that's why people think, I would never choose what I currently have in my life. And when I first started to study this stuff, I felt that way. I was like, I would never choose this life. I had a really big victim consciousness, and I was being victimized by everything. And at first, that's really hard to accept. But when you believe it to be true for you, so if I believe I'm a victim, I might not think I want it, but I'm still getting all the feelings around it and nailing myself to the cross of that reality for me. And I can't be anything else because I believe it to be true. I'm my own creator. I am being that. And so that is what is being resurrected as the me. And I find that just absolutely so powerful. And with that, we'll just wrap with a little thing from the Course in Miracles. I'm not going to read the whole lesson, but I think it's fantastic. It says, I'm under no law but God's. And in this sense, we're going to take Neville's definition here of God, really, which is I am, my own I am, and what I believe to be true for me. And this really hammers home, too, how we're constantly trying to put our happiness outside of ourselves, and that's a misalignment with this idea that I am creating my life. So it says, we've observed before how many senseless things have seemed to you to be salvation, which I'm going to call happiness. Each has imprisoned you with laws as senseless as itself. You're not bound by them. But to understand this, you have to realize that happiness isn't there. While you would seek for it in things that have no meaning, you bind yourself to laws that make no sense. Thus do you seek to prove happiness is where it is not. Think of the freedom and the recognition that you're not bound by all the strange and twisted laws you've set up to save you. And I can really relate this to certainly in looking for work, or, always think it's outside of myself. I have to do something perfectly or jump through the right hoop. So it says, you really think that you would starve unless you have stacks of green paper strips and piles of metal discs. You really think a small round pellet or some fluid pushed into your veins through a sharpened needle will ward off disease and death. You really think you're alone unless another body is with you. But this is insanity. You call them laws and put them under different names in a long catalog of rituals that have no use and serve no purpose. You think you must obey the laws of medicine, of economics, and of health. Protect the body and it will be saved. And so what it's getting at here, right, as long as I believe those things, though, they do have power for me. So we really need to take our power back. There are no laws but the ones I believe in. That's what it's saying. I have no laws but God's, the one I'm making true for myself. The body suffers just in order that the mind will fail to see it as the victim of itself. So where I'm putting my faith is what's becoming true for me. The body's suffering is a mask the mind holds up to hide what really suffers, which is my mind. By believing all of these things can save me, I'm putting it outside myself and not taking my power. So it says there are no laws except the laws of God, so except for the ones that I believe and make true for myself. And it's really having us focus on this. So it's saying laws of nutrition, talk about nutrition a lot, of immunization, of medication, and of the body's protection in innumerable ways. Continue to think about all the laws you make up that you give power, the laws of friendship, good relationships, reciprocity. And often even religion will teach you these things that, these have laws that are ordained by a God outside of yourself. Okay, but that's all it calls the magical beliefs. Pull your power back and know that there are no laws but God. So what we give power to is the only thing that has power. Payment is neither given nor received. Exchange cannot be made. There are no substitutes, and nothing is replaced by something else. God's laws forever give and never take. This is so exciting. And it says, so think about the love your Father or your beingness has for you, all the endless joy that's offered you. And let's go ahead and open up the channel of the joys of heaven, which it says again, heaven is not conscious, or heaven isn't a locality, it's consciousness. So these are all the joys that heaven, our consciousness, can give to us. So repeat for the day, I'm under no laws but God's. And in that sense, it's under no laws, but what I believe to be true for myself. I'm giving everything the power that it has for me. And I always wondered how I was able to, for so long, think I had a lot of issues, take medication for those, and now I don't, and I'm better than I've ever been. And I realize it's because my conception of myself has thoroughly changed. And of course, there's always further to go, and that's what this adventure is about. But what I certainly feel very empowered from the reading today as a powerful reminder from where I woke up this morning that I have the power over what happens to me. It's about how I feel, how I define myself, and what my vibration is. Those are the laws based on my mood, and what I believe to be true for me is going to affect my mood and how I view things and how I feel and how I create out in the world. So hopefully there was something in there for you as well. I do have a few more thoughts on it, but I'm going to switch it over to another video. Have a blessed day, and remember that you are the powerful creator in your life.